So today we're going to talk about the last changes to the IEP with the last reauthorization of IDEA. And again, these changes took place in 2004, so they're really entrenched in our educational system by this point. So the last reauthorization really wanted to reduce the stress on both districts and parents. And so they attempted in the law to to implement ways in which we could reduce paperwork. I don't think that in particular has happened, but some of these other bulleted points have definitely happened. So there is a reduction in meetings for parents and districts, potentially saving staff time. There are expedited changes to the individualized education plan, and it is allowed districts and parents are allowed now to meet alternatively. So these last four bullets in particular, if there's only minor changes to the IEP, or there's some testing going on that with a reevaluation where again minor changes may take place, the parents need not come in for a meeting. In terms of team attendance also, that was a change, so that if a team member's area of expertise is not being discussed at the meeting, then they may not be present if the parent agrees to this in writing. However, if the team member's area is important and is going to be discussed, then the team members still may be excused provided they've given a summary, that maybe there's someone else present that can discuss their work, but again, the parent needs to agree to this in writing. In Pennsylvania, as this slide talks about, there might be some differences. I guess what's pointed out is we need to know the difference in terms of the state that we live in. So even though the bulk of us in this class are in Pennsylvania, we do have students from New Jersey and Delaware and some from New York. So know your regulations in relation to IEP attendance. In terms of IEP development, the parents and the local education agency may agree not to convene an IEP meeting to make changes after that annual important meeting. So again, these are really if there's minor changes or if there's modifications that they're aware of, and upon request that the parents receive, of course, the revised copy of the IEP. The IEP contains statement of short-term objectives or benchmarks for only certain children, and that's what this slide depicts. So it used to be that every single IEP for every single child had benchmarks or short-term objectives, but now they are only required for those children who take alternative assessments, and usually these are those children with more significant disabilities. The Pennsylvania Department of Ed developed draft alternative standards. So again, this slide just points to the fact that we need to be aware of our state testing, who takes which test, again, so that will impact what is going on the IEP. So if the IEP contains those short-term objectives, obviously whatever we're teaching or implementing for the child is based on peer-reviewed research to the extent practicable. So our best practices are based on research-based interventions. There was also a change related to transition, and we'll talk about transition later in the course, but it's important now that we have a sense of our middle grade students and our secondary students. And so there has to be a course of study at age 14, which is no longer required in most states, but in Pennsylvania we still look for courses of study. But all states, in terms of the federal law, have to begin transition planning by age 16. And really, transition planning may begin at any age for any child, because we're really looking for children with disabilities to start this process as early as possible, even in the primary school years. Again, Pennsylvania, age 14, we're looking at transition. In terms of the changes that took place in 2004, the law spoke to those students that were transfer students, those students with disabilities transferring both within state and from out of state. So within state, we need to make sure that we're following the IEP that the child has come with to our district. Out of state, we still need to implement services for the child, but we are entitled to conduct an evaluation and, if necessary, develop a new IEP. And certainly that can happen within state as well, in terms of if the new district deems that the child needs a new evaluation. And certainly it's important to transfer students' records confidentially. In Pennsylvania, again, there's pretty much, I think it's mimicking the federal law, so they speak to both in-state and out-of-state requirements for the transfer of students into our districts. We moved to multi-year IEPs, and particularly for long-term planning, and my guess is that most districts proceed with annual, but the law does give us some leeway in terms of this. And that concludes the changes that took place to the IEP within the last reauthorization.